I actually managed to get some sleep on the sleeper train last night, which, as you can tell by the noise shaking around, is actually pretty good going. We've got about an hour and a half left until we get into Ninh Binh, and then we've got to play the classic game of just killing some time until we can check into our hotel. After being on the move so much in the last few weeks, it was time for us to slow down for a bit. We stayed in a small resort out in the countryside between Tam Kok and Trang An, and honestly, we couldn't have picked a more perfect spot to chill out for a while. Peace and quiet is a rarity in Vietnam, so the tranquil setting of our bungalow was just what we needed. We were both feeling the effect of constantly being on the move for the last few weeks, but Grace especially had come down with something. So our only plans over the next few days were to recuperate for a bit and explore the surrounding scenery at a leisurely pace. So Grace isn't feeling too well today, so I'm currently on a bit of a cycle expedition to the shops to pick up some supplies for her. But let's see how I get on these Vietnamese roads. Mission success, I've got the painkillers, got the snacks. Time to get back to Gracie. Grace still wasn't feeling great the following day, so I swapped the push bike for one with a motor and set out for the local town of Tam Kok to hunt down a cappuccino. Tam Kok is a really nice little town, small and laid back, but it has everything you need with plenty of restaurants, guest houses and a few cafes. I got the impression that the town mainly serves as a base for those who come to explore the incredible local scenery, the focal point of which is the Trang An highway. After dropping off some food for Grace, who was still stuck in bed, I went to check it out for a bit on the scooter. The limestone casts are incredible to see in person, and I spent a whole afternoon just riding the scooter around admiring the scenery. The roads around here are nice and quiet, so even if you're a novice on a scooter like me, it's not too intimidating.
Day 3 and Grace was feeling a bit better, so she joined me on the scooter to come and see Trangan. We didn't really have any agenda in mind when we set off, so we just hopped on the scooter with the intention of stopping if we saw anything that looked interesting.
Stop.
When I spotted a few other tourists on scooters pulling into a roadside attraction, I thought there must be something good in there to check out. Where are we going, Gracie?
We have no idea.
I think we need to go this way. We just pulled in with the motorbike.
And then we
paid $250,000 each. Now we have no idea where we're going.
We thought we were getting tickets to walk over to the palace, but apparently we have tickets for a boat somewhere.
We're going on a boat, apparently. Now it's worth me pointing out that we did practically zero research before coming to Ninh Binh. So we really were oblivious to the UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is the main reason most people come to travel here in the first place. We boarded a 4-person rowing boat powered by one small but strong Vietnamese lady to explore the limestone casts, caves and temples on a 4-hour tour. Good accident, isn't it?
Yeah, so glad that we're doing it.
Yeah, it's amazing. This tour was honestly one of the most incredible things we've done on our travels, and probably the highlight of our trip to Vietnam. The scenery is absolutely incredible, and the temples are amongst the most beautiful we have seen. The low-hanging mist among the towering limestone pillars make you feel as if you'd entered a different world full of peace, tranquility, and a million different shades of green. With the tour complete, we continued north along the Trang An Highway to the site of a hidden lake. Luckily, someone had constructed this tunnel so we didn't have to climb over the mountain to get to it. The scenery was majestic here, just as it had been on the boat tour, but here there were even fewer tourists, so it felt like we had the place to ourselves to explore. The next day it was time for us to reluctantly leave the peacefulness of Ninh Binh behind and board a bus bound for Hanoi. Unfortunately, Grace still wasn't well, so whilst she rested up, I set out solo to explore Hanoi streets by foot. If you don't mind getting absolutely soaked, walking around Hanoi in the rain is very atmospheric. I set off into the old quarter with no destination in mind, just wandering around and taking in the busy streets filled with vendors. This was a complete contrast to the tranquility of the last few days, but I didn't mind. I've always been more of a city person, so the busyness doesn't bother me a bit. I instinctively stumbled upon Beer Street, but it was too early for any of the pubs to be open yet, so I just had to take a mental note to make my way back there one evening. Day 2 in Hanoi and Grace was still under the weather, so I set out on my own again to walk around Hon Keem Lake and then went to check out St. Joseph's Cathedral and the French colonial buildings surrounding it. The following day, Grace felt well enough to join me to check out the Temple of Literature, which is a temple in central Hanoi dating back almost 1,000 years and dedicated to the Chinese philosopher Confucius. It was once a university of literature and poetry, but now is a historic site for tourists. Possibly inspired by the temple, we wandered northwards through the city to an English language bookshop called Bookworm, where I picked up a couple of books to read on our onward travels. With Grace still recovering, we decided to get out of the city for a couple of days, so rented a bungalow in Ba Vi, about an hour outside Hanoi, where we did nothing but relax for a couple of days before returning to the city. After some recuperation, Grace was feeling better, and we made up for lost time with a day of sightseeing in Hanoi, starting at the iconic train street. We had heard that it was difficult to access the street these days, but we didn't have any issues. We found that, rather than trying to get in through the guarded barriers at either end, it was best to go to the road parallel to the train tracks with the hope of bumping into one of the cafe owners, which we did almost immediately and were escorted inside. No trains went by in our time at the cafe, but it was still a cool experience regardless. We then set off into the old town so that Grace could explore some of the areas that I had previously. the afternoon, we headed to the Vietnamese Military Museum to see some cool decommissioned planes, tanks and guns, as well as learn some Vietnamese history along the way. We couldn't stay in Hanoi for much longer with the time on our visas dwindling. With Grace being ill, our plans for North Vietnam had to be adapted. The Ha Giang loop was out of the question and we decided to skip Ha Long Bay to instead head northwest to the mountain town of Sapa, close to the border with China. A 5-hour bus journey later, we were high in the mountains. Sapa is dominated by one mountain in particular, Mount Fansipan, which stands at around 3,800 metres tall, and of course we had to check it out. Luckily, you don't need to climb it anymore to get to the summit. The peak is accessible by 2 trains and a cable car. We set off as early as we could to catch it in the morning light, which ended up being a great decision as it gets much busier as the morning goes on. From the summit, we descended down hundreds of steps back to the upper cable car station, taking in the incredible views, temples and monuments along the way. Our remaining time in Sapa was spent shopping for deals at the totally legitimate designer outlet shops and sampling some of the local food specialities. Originally, we'd hoped to leave Vietnam across one of the land borders to Laos, but we found that this wouldn't be possible on our type of visa, so we had to go all the way back to Hanoi to catch a flight instead, which meant another 5-hour plus coach journey. All in all, despite Grace being unwell for a lot of our time there, we really enjoyed our time in North Vietnam and wish that we could have dedicated a bit more time than we had here. Ninh Binh was definitely the highlight for us. It's just unlike anything we have ever seen on our travels previously, and at least at the time that we visited, it did not feel like it had become a victim of over-tourism. You could really find some peace and quiet here and just enjoy the beautiful scenery. We just about made it out of Vietnam before our visas lapsed. Next stop, Laos.